How's everyone doing today?
Good. How are you?
Good. I am Kenya Johnson. I'm the communications manager at Pima County Public Library, and stepping in as the moderator today, as well as the one of the panel members. And we're going to be addressing publicizing and marketing seed libraries. And a number of us have lots of experience in libraries, and you're actually a librarian.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's one. All right, we're good. We're on a roll. We're going to start off by just introducing ourselves to you, and then we're going to pair up some of the questions that we came up with. Then we'll have time for Q&A from you guys. I think your questions are actually more important than our questions, but we'll start the conversation, okay? So we'll start down here.
I'm Abby. I'm the director of Patagonia Library. Patagonia is about 65 miles southeast of Tucson. And I arrived in Patagonia in 1978, holding a degree in agriculture, a hive tool, and a bee veil, ready to continue my work with honeybees. Realizing that I needed a little more to sustain myself, I landed a job in a local library. Went on a couple of detours, earned my master's in agricultural education, followed by a master's degree in library science. Became the director of Patagonia Library, and most recently implemented the library's legacy garden, which reflects homestead plants from the area. Planted the garden, all volunteers, using cuttings from original plants as well as collecting their stories. And now, just in the formative stages, fledgling stages of beginning the seed library.
Chrissy? I am Chrissy Orr, or Caristiona in the Gaelic. I'm I'm an invasive species from Scotland, but I've lived here or in New Mexico for 26 years now. Wow, I never thought I would stay this long. So I'm probably rooted now. I actually have a granddaughter now that is a New Mexican, so I'm probably really rooted. I am an artist, a mother, a grandmother, and a lover of seeds and gardening. I come from a background of having a mother and a grandfather that were both avid gardeners. I'm an urban kid, but, and in Scotland we didn't have access to land, but we had allotments, what were called allotments. So my mother and my grandfather always grew the food. In fact, my grandfather actually kept a sheep in the allotment too. And also my father was a librarian. He designed libraries and taught. He was the dean of the School of Librarianship in Aberdeen, Scotland. So I grew up with that gardening, growing food connection, and this very socialist, Marxist-Leninist father that absolutely believed that it was a human right for access to knowledge. And I just was sitting here this morning going, oh my gosh, my father would have been so amazed to think that I was at this conference around seed libraries, because this is exactly what he would have wanted. So I'm part of Seed Broadcast with Jen, and we really, we hold that ethos of sharing, open source, the commons, and the absolute right for us human beings and the beyond human beings as beings to the access for seeds and access to good nutritional food, and for the betterment, the continuation of our world, and for looking at climate change at the moment. So we have many different, what we call tactics at Seed Broadcast about getting that word out there in as many ways as we can about our seeds, the saving of seeds, our land-raised seeds, and the stories that are connected to them, which are very, very important. So I could go on forever. Kenya.
Hello again. As I said, my name is Kenya Johnson, and I'm the communications manager here at Pima County Public Library. And I've been here for 3 years, celebrated my 3rd anniversary back in March. Prior to that, I had my own marketing consulting business here in Tucson. And I've been in marketing for well over 20 years, both in the private sector, the public sector, nonprofit sector. My first job out of college was working for the mayor of Tucson as one of his aides, and I soon became a speechwriter. And after that, fell into public relations, even though I had no training in that, and worked for a PR agency here in town for about 8 years before moving on to nonprofit. And then in working with my own clients, I loved that because I got to help them. I was able to help them tell their own stories in their own ways. That's really what marketing and publicity is about, and that's what I do for the library now. It's a great place to be. I'm not a librarian, but I get to work with them every day. And with 27 locations in Pima County, we have a lot going on every day, including this wonderful conference, which has a lot of sweat and I think a few tears involved in the planning process. So I was helping out with the publicity in the best way that I could with that. And I always tell people when I have different occasions to share what I do in my background is that I got a C in marketing at the U of A. And that my 10-year-old daughter just cracks up when I tell her that, because it just shows you that where you start isn't necessarily where you end up. And so what I'll be sharing with you today are mostly from my experience as a marketer, as a professional marketing communications person, and from a wider perspective, not just dealing with seed libraries and publicizing seed libraries, but publicity and marketing effectively in general, that maybe you can take home some tips that might work for you.
I'm Megan Kimball. I'm the managing editor of Edible Baja, Arizona, which is a local food magazine in town. We're part of Edible Community, so there are 80 Edible publications all over the country. Ours, we publish every other month and distribute 26,000 copies free all over southern Arizona. And we cover, our tagline is celebrating food, the foodways of Tucson and the borderlands. So we go south into Sonora, and we're really, the mission of the magazine is really to get people engaged with local food and their place that they live in. So I can talk more about the magazine later in our mission, but my background is in writing. I'm a journalist and a creative writer. I got my MFA in creative writing at the U of A, which is what brought me to Tucson originally. Had worked in journalism in Los Angeles, where I'm from. So, you know, I think a lot about stories and getting people engaged with what they're reading. You know, I think that any story that I write, I feel like it's a success if someone's like, oh, I saw that story you wrote and I went and did something differently, or I thought about something differently. And so in terms of thinking about seed libraries, you know, part of the mission of the magazine is to get people involved in growing their own food and participating in their own food, and this is just sort of one facet of how people can do that. And so I think a lot about with the magazine of how we can get people to read a story and then actually go to the library. It's not just a, oh, hey, how cool that there is this thing. It's a, you know, what do you do differently now? So that's a short ramble. I guess I'm done.
Hi. It's a glorious morning today. All that nice rain kind of brought out the beauty of the desert. And so I just wanted to give that a shout out today. So my name is Jen Hart-Mann, and I'm an artist and a farmer and a collective cohort of Seed Broadcast, which, you know, Seed Broadcast isn't necessarily, you know, we're not a seed library. We, though, promote seed libraries and seed saving and seed action and community resilience through the work that we do. And so I hope that today what we can at least contribute to the panel is, you know, some of the conversations that we've had with seed librarians across the country, and seed savers, and kind of the different forms they take, and what becomes most critical, which I think we're really interested in talking about as a group, is sort of the generosity involved in the process, which is, you know, akin to what the seeds teach us, is that we need to share and grow, and we can't do it alone, that we do it together. And so partnerships, networking is really instrumental in that. And as well, a part of that really, I feel like, is attuned to sort of what my background is as an artist and a farmer, and those seem like really disparate sort of pieces of a larger puzzle. But, you know, for me, there's something really inherent in both of those sort of practices that are creative. They're creative processes. And through that, it's not so much about an end objective of making something that we call art, or engaging in something that just makes food, but it's about learning, you know, and it's about a kind of transformative relationship that we have through that process. And so I think that, you know, through what's happening with the seed library movement right now, it also embodies that, and it's very powerful. And so that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Jen. So with everyone out in the audience, how many of you have a mission statement with the organization that you're connected with? Hands high.
Not yet.
Okay. How many are you in the not yet
Not
process?
yet.
Okay. All right, great. Our first question has to do with mission statements and how did you go about developing yours? And start with Abby and see if some of this might help.
Being a fledgling seed library, the first thing that was necessary was determining whether or not the community actually wanted a seed library. I've always taken a bottom-up approach to any sort of programming in the library. So the first thing I noticed, I had the seed planted about a seed library in our community. Fortunately, we have Native Seed Search in Patagonia and Borderlands Restoration, another group that's dedicated to restoring the habitat in the Sky Islands of Arizona, New Mexico, and Mexico, I think. So I had a couple of people approach me because with these 2 organizations came a shift in the demographics of the community itself. And they said, let's start a seed library. Okay, so we called a orientation meeting. It had about 40 or 50 people show up from not only Patagonia, but neighboring communities, one of them being Nogales, Mexico, right on the border of Sonora, Mexico, Nogales, Sonora, Mexico, and called it a potluck seed exchange. And we conducted the program in 2 languages and then had a potluck and seed swap. So that told me that there was interest. And let's see if I know how to use a PC here. Enter? Yeah. So after this meeting, I sent out an email to a few key people and said, in your spare brain time, think of 2 or 3 key words each that we can use to develop a mission statement. Because this was community-based, I wanted input from those participating. And the words that came up were germinating, community, regional, self-sufficiency, availability, story, resource, participation, viability, and once again, community. Whoops, wrong one. Enter. Enter. So we sat down, gathered these people together, and we sat down for about 15 minutes, and Francesca was there sitting around the table. And we came up with the Patagonia Library's Semioteca seeks to germinate community participation and regional self-sufficiency through growing adapted plants and saving seeds and their stories for pollinator, agricultural, and educational needs. Now the term pollinator in here is something I have not seen in anyone else's mission statement. but because that is so key to our community, it is something we have decided to focus on. So now we have our mission statement. We need a logo. So put up some signs, put some posts on Facebook, and said there's a drawing contest for the Patagonia Library Semioteca, Seed Lending Library logo. And the prize is a free library card. And last week, we received the picture of our new logo, which we will use to brand any further information or use in publicity of our seed library.
I love a branding process that is so succinct. There's a beginning and an end, and I say that coming from a place of going through a rebranding process for our system here in Tucson, and it started last year, and it's been consistently going forward, and a contest is a wonderful way of involving the community and getting buy-in that way, and knowing that when that person and that person's friends and that person's family sees this logo, it really resonates with them. So I love that you took it out from the group and let the community own it. Yeah. So Chrissy and Jen, how do you have some connection with the development of mission statements?
Oh gosh.
Is that a yes?
Too many. I've developed too many mission statements. Yeah, I think for Seed Broadcast, Jen and I had a very specific collaborative intent that we developed together through actually the experiences. I mean, really, you know, Jen and I came together, we had lots of conversations around to seed this idea of Seed Broadcast. And it was out of those conversations we then did one action at a Las Vegas seed exchange. And it was out of that we met various farmers and seed savers and lovers of growing food up in that area. And we asked if they would mind if we came out and spent a day with them. So Jen and I would go out and spend a day at their farms, in their gardens, in their kitchen, taking photographs and recording their stories. And it was really out of that initial group that we began to develop our mission. And we didn't send it out to them, and I think that's a lovely way that you did that. We kind of developed it ourselves, and I think it's still in development, to tell you the truth, because I feel our project is living all the time and changing. We've got a very specific intent, but perhaps our mission might shift and change sometimes. And I think we kind of need to work ours. Ours is quite long, and it needs to be a little more succinct, I sometimes think. I mean, I'm developing another one at the moment for a collaborative that I'm starting with some other people called the Living Story Collaborative through the Academy for the Love of Learning. And the way we're developing that mission is being in conversation, and we've hired someone actually that's coming in and actually notating out of our conversations all the points that are emerging, and then she sends it back to us, and we're kind of distilling it that way. So that might be another way to do it. I think through conversation it's a really great way to develop your mission. But I do sit, I know with institutions, it's a little more important. I mean, we have to have a mission for, you know, a 501c3, and if we're applying for grants, we have to have a mission. But I do feel they need to be kept alive. So I'll just put that out.
Jen, do you have anything to add to what Christy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's funny because, you know, I think writing it down sort of, it codifies it. And sometimes that's really important, you know. But I think that maybe our mission kind of rambles. It's a little, you know, overly flourished. But there's something kind of poetic about it too, and there's enough room in it that it helps us to see, right, through the experience of the project that we do, kind of what is valuable and important in terms of what people are sharing with us. So the flexibility actually allows us to keep it alive. Whereas the core is still there, right, in terms of what it's serving and what its intention is, and what are the no-nos, kind of what we will not do, like that keeps us really attuned to what's happening on the grassroots, right? But I was thinking a lot about sort of my farm and my experiment there, and how it, in a way, it's funny because if we had written down our intention from the beginning, we would probably be in a very different place. Well, we'd maybe be in the same place, but we'd be much further along, right? So sometimes the process, you have to engage in the process in order for it to shed light on your real dreams, right? But for our farm, we came at it with an idea of doing something very experimental, and having the land be the primary sort of intention, the ethic, right? The land ethic would drive our decisions. And very soon we got swept up into, hey, well, let's do some market farming, and let's, we need to make a little bit of income here. And pretty soon, years later, we were like, wait a second, what are we doing? Like, if we're just trying to maximize our profits, like, we've totally lost touch with what our intention was. And so, we had the ability to say, hey, let's stop, let's just stop this nonsense and start over again. And so we learned a lot through those mistakes, which I think is valuable. Like, we don't value mistakes in our culture, and those are very important points, and also the realization that mistakes are useful in terms of then, finding another path, right, and choosing differently. And those are very different things, and I think that's what Chrissy pointed out too, and Abby, is that, in terms of doing community work and public work and institutional work, I don't know how much it's harder to make mistakes in those frameworks, because they don't, they're more damaging, right, in terms of the way that the institution functions and/or how it affects community, and so it's maybe really taking time to develop those ideas, and that intention is really important. So I don't know, and I know that there are a lot of different forms that seed libraries take, and so perhaps that also sort of tones the context, right, in which those intentions and that mission can be articulated.
Thank you. Megan, with the mission of Edible, how does that feed into what you do on a daily basis in your work?
Yeah, our mission was pretty clear to us from the beginning. We didn't have a lot of sort of fuss about it. It's really just to sort of, like I said, celebrate the foodways of this place, and to sort of root people in their place and get them more involved in local food. So what that means for the magazine is that we have sort of two goals, which is, one of them is to just like celebrate the amazing things that people are doing in local food, including the seed library. We have this really beautiful story about the seed library in our May-June issue, or seed libraries in Southern Arizona, with illustrations and interviews, and it's a fun sort of narrative to hopefully make people aware that this exists. I think a lot of people have no idea that this is here, and so I see that as a huge mission of, like, we have however many thousand readers. I think it's easy, something that it's easy for me to do, and for our editorial staff, we talk about this all the time, it's easy to assume people know what's going on. And I think for the most part, a lot of people just aren't engaged, just because that information isn't presented to them in a way that's engaging. So something that we sort of started doing really with our first issue is lots of images and photographs, and I'm a writer, so of course I want it to be all words, but I think that something I'm really proud of with the magazine is that it's just sort of like, it's really pretty, and people have responded to that, of like, I think it makes people really proud to be here and to live here and to engage in their food system here, and that's something I didn't anticipate going into it when we set our mission of like celebrating. It was like, oh yeah, of course, right? But I think that sense of pride makes people want to take care of this place, and want to take care of all of the institutions and farmers and growers and all the sort of things that make up our food system. It's this sense of like ownership over it, and so that therefore people engage. So that's part of the celebrating, but part of that too is like I'm really proud of some of the journalism that we've done about our food system, and we're right at the border, and so there are a lot of our local food system butting up against this really large multinational food system. And that's something that's part of our mission, is just to inform people about the broader issues at play around this, which is, in the story about seed libraries, you can't just talk about checking out local seeds without talking about the international context for what's happening with seed companies, and everyone here knows all of the sort of concentration of resources of seeds. So for me, it's really important to sort of celebrate all of the amazing things happening here, but also to sort of provide that broader context of how does this fit in with broader issues at play, which is always a tension we have of like, we want to really talk about, we want the magazine to be positive and people to be excited to read it, but there's a lot of really not positive things happening, and that's really important to sort of to contextualize and give meaning to the other stuff that's happening here. So it's that constant play between celebrating and illuminating what else is happening.
One thing that I would want to share in regards to mission statements and the research that we did here at the library in our process, which is still ongoing, is that we looked at a number of other public library mission statements, and we analyzed them, and we looked at, we got feedback from our staff, which is a little bit over 500 people. And one thing we did learn was that simple sometimes works. One library system, Edmonton Public Library in Canada, their mission statement is this, and I bet you can remember it after I say it. It is, we share. One piece of advice that we came across as part of our research is that if your mission statement can fit on a t-shirt, it's probably pretty good. So I keep that in mind, whether you have one right now or you're in the process, is that if you can remember it when you go home and you can remember it when you get up, it probably means something then. So I'm gonna sort of switch gears and throw a question out to you guys. You guys are here for a reason, I'm guessing, and I wanna get an idea of what your questions are. What were you expecting to get out of this particular panel session, so that we're not answering questions that you didn't want answered. So I need some hands up. What questions do you have? We're not gonna answer them exactly right now, but in regards to publicity.
How do we get this whole cycle? How do we make the community aware that we have a seed library and there are all these different pieces to it very quickly and easily and simply?
Yeah.
I like the brochure about seed saving. It's great.
Yeah. Welcome to our world. Yeah, that's what any organization or business wants to do, is how do we get the information out there? How do we let people know?
So I don't have a seed library yet, but I'm hoping to start one in my village after this.
Okay.
But I have a company, we're a benefit corporation, making a video game to help basically teach people about seed saving and permaculture and growing food sustainably. And one of our goals is using this game as a tool to connect them with existing seed libraries and community gardens and those sort of things. So basically, they play the little games that are teaching them the permaculture and seed saving, and then it cuts them off and sends them outside and says, go actually do it in real life. Go take a picture, go check in at a community garden or a seed library or a farmer's market. And if they can't find one, then if there's not one already in the system, then they need to go out and find one, put it on there, and then share all that with their Facebook or their Twitter or their Instagram, so that they're publicizing what's actually happening while they're going and volunteering and engaging. So we're looking right now. We don't have the product built yet. We're still prototyping it out, and we're going to be alpha testing in North County, San Diego over the summer. But when we start beta testing, we actually want to beta test with existing seed libraries and with existing community gardens, so that we can make sure that this is a useful tool, that it's actually something that's not a pain, but actually helps in outreach and helps in volunteer organization. And we want to actually use it as like a task management thing, so you can say, these are the needs for our seed library right now. We need somebody to update our catalog once a week. And then that can then be a quest that the gamers that come on and take on, and then you can afterwards verify, oh yeah, Johnny came by and he updated our whole catalog. So boom, he gets his seed points. So we're really interested in since we're still a fledgling little startup, in how to start those relationships and basically engage those that are already out there doing this, and not not try and like reinvent the wheel, but really offer ourselves up as a tool to help y'all, better promote what you're doing and also better engage people that can come and, take your seeds or volunteer for your organization or help promote your organization.
That's great.
So the game itself is called Seeds the Game. So www.seedsthegame.com.
Great. Good luck with that.
Thanks.
I guess I would be curious, sort of, once you do all the 101 type stuff, like once you do, you have a mission statement, you have the logo, you have the brochure, you've made your initial partnerships. I mean, this is really basically the same question you were asking, I guess, but just like
What's next, and how do
brainstorming,
you-
what's the next step? What's,
Okay.
The 200 level
Okay.
marketing,
We're not the
and-
master's level
yeah,
yet, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Like, because, I feel like that initial stuff, there's a lot of, free webinars out there that we've taken, but a lot of the information and advice that's coming is sort of, at this point, redundant, and I'm just sort of trying to look for taking that, I mean, so to a certain degree, creativity is always, you have to come with it yourself, but also, if there are just brilliant ideas floating around out there, I just thought I'd pick
Okay.
your brains.
All right. We're
So-
looking for brilliant ideas, everybody, okay? We must be brilliant.
So I think a lot of times, especially I'm sure a lot of us here in this room are, there's a lot of preaching to the choir in the seed community, and I would like to hear some publicity and some program ideas of how to really bridge that gap and go further and reach maybe some of the communities that a lot of times we run into opposition with, and how to really, bring us together rather than cultivating division. Just bringing
That's great.
communities together.
That's really good. And back here, yeah.
I was just wondering if you guys would be willing to go over the most energy efficient way of bringing in the entire community besides people who are already involved in seed saving. So more or less along general lines.
Okay, good.
Very important.
Those are good. There's a question behind you, and then I'll get right back to you.
So I'm not a seed librarian, but I work for an organization that is a seed conservation organization. So I'm wondering how organizations like mine can help get the word out in place.
Great.
So our library is 3 months old.
Yay!
It's been essentially a one-woman show with a lot of repacking help when needed. But it is kind of like preaching to the choir. All my friends know about the seed library, and they use it and they put seeds in it and all that. But I've just been, this whole conference has been so fruitful for me. I mean, I can't go to sleep at night if I'm taking notes on my computer. But one of the things I'm really realizing is that bringing in Spanish language translations of everything that I've created is really important, because number one, there's a whole bunch of Spanish-speaking gardeners that we're not reaching. They're not in that same subculture.
Okay.
And also some of the families that are the most in need of this kind of food help are Spanish-speaking. And so this is like opening up a whole new thing. And I also realized last night that I need to form a steering committee so that to spread out both the responsibility and the creativity and all that stuff. So anything that you can say, that knowing now what my basic footprint is here, very helpful.
That's great. And where are you from?
Silver City, New Mexico.
Oh, yay, next door. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm gonna, any more questions before I bring it back to the panel? Over here, and then over here.
I have a question. How many of the seed libraries that are active right now have an online accessible database or list of what seeds you currently have?
Pima does, yeah.
Yeah, we have. Okay.
What's the service that you use for that, or what's?
We're connected. Our seeds are all cataloged very similar to Pima County system, so we're within the public library and we're using the database already set up, which is really helpful for reaching out to the broader community.
And how often do you have to update it, or is it?
Right now, so I work for the public library, and so basically I spend all winter cataloging seeds, getting them ready, and then by the end of March, I'm done. I'm not going to be adding anything new into the system until the following winter, just because of time constraints.
Okay. I'm going to pop over here to this question just so that we get them in.
Yeah, I think that it was touched on was how to come together in a higher way.
Okay.
And just wondering if we can touch on some points on how to network amongst each other and upstep that so that we can come in more effectively and come in more as a whole. Because I know we all come from different areas. This is international. You know, I don't know most of you.
That's good. You're talking to new folks.
You know,
Right.
you know, some of us have Facebook and whatnot, social networking, that's great. And, you know, I'm very limited in how I can with transportation and everything, but, you know, I would love to have more of a network and like a solid core. You know, we have a group here, but we don't necessarily have like a core. And how do we become more unified? And I know we're kind of fragmented, and you said something about cultivating division kind of is an innate thing on this world in general too. Because that's where it's at. And I think in general, like the world needs to change as a culture, and we all need to build that and support everything that all encompasses building a higher culture. But more directly in our kind of microcosm of how we can affect food and build a network amongst each other. You know, I just want to see some solutions on how to make that the most effective that we possibly can, because I see this as a very urgent matter. You know, this, and I think we all do. We're all very much on the same page about that. So,
Okay.
touch on that.
Great. Okay. So I'm hearing at least one key theme is you need brilliant ideas, you need them now, and they need to be doable. They need to be something that doesn't keep you up at night, right? Okay. All right. So we're ready to do that?
I think there's one
Okay.
more question.
We have one more question. I'm sorry, sir.
I'm not just late arriving question.
Okay.
Late formulated. So, the challenge with the seed library that I work with, at least I use, one of the challenges is keeping the cabinet full of seeds. And for local growers, there's lots of organic farmers in the area where I live, but those people are growing food. They're not necessarily growing seed, and how to get the farmers to at least, you don't need a big area to grow a lot of seed, for them to be interested or convinced that with an effort and some time toward growing some seed and being able to donate that to the seed library, it would be something that, you know, they might be interested in doing. And with the ripple effect, you know, through the community, or you know, who can take advantage of that?
Right. Oh, thank you. Great. Okay, so I'm going to bring it back to the panel to answer in snack-sized responses. Brilliant idea for publicizing at the 200 level. We'll assume that everybody's at the 101, completed the 101 class, okay? So looking for that one brilliant idea that you've seen or other, you know, maybe implemented yourself, as well as networking and how to create that core group that can help you sustain the momentum and keep it going so that it's just not you. Okay, go.
Got
it.
The
brilliant idea.
Well, I do think like that idea, I know the question, it's sort of, you know, the question is the question, partnerships, like you need to develop partnerships. And some of that is sort of rooted in the context of where the library is located, right? Where is it? Is it in a public space, or is it in sort of a nonprofit space? Is it in what are the limitations? Maybe defining what the limitations are to access, right? And to contact with people that aren't inside already is key. It's just critical. And I also think time, like what I've heard over and over again, it's time-based. I mean, it's not, I mean, it's kind of with the cycle of the seeds too. It's time-based. It takes time for it to sort of ripple through the community. But I think developing partnerships, as many diverse partnerships as possible within your community, is essential. And it's essential because then it stacks functions, right? As if you've got multiple partners, then you've got multiple volunteer possibilities, and then you get a steering committee that's composed of all those different groups, that you can share the responsibility, right? And then it doesn't fall on one person. So I think that that's really critical. And I think the brilliance of at this point, some of the frameworks within a public library are that typically in most communities, the library is a place where people from all walks of life go to. And oftentimes it serves the underserved because it's a public space, you've got free Wi-Fi, you've got resources there that are really serving all sorts of needs in the community. And so you're already located in a place that has contact. And so if that's where it exists, then it's just one more step to be able to let those people know that resource is there and how they can access it and how they can participate in it. So that's
your one
yeah.
brilliant. Okay, I'm going to pop over here to Abby.
I
Brilliant idea.
I think one of the key things to remember is that not all people in your target audience have access to technology. And there has to be secondary means of reaching out to that audience. And contingent upon the type of community you live in, word of mouth and personal relationships go a long way. You talk to your friend talks to two of their friends, let them know what's going on. And also having the ability to offer free programming with food, because food brings people in.
It's an incentive like no other. I love that.
Just wondering, like, the logistics of do you just have a small budget then that you like feed your people with, or do you have partnerships that you get food? Like, how do you get
food? Potluck.
Okay.
Potluck.
Share. Yeah. I'm gonna pop over here to Megan. Brilliant idea.
I don't know if I have a brilliant idea. I wanted to speak to the preaching to the choir questions, if that's okay. Just because that's something I think about all the time with the magazine. We're a local food magazine, so to some extent the people who pick us up are people who already care about local food. And so I think all the time about how do we engage people who are not engaged with local food. And I think, so for example, we have in our May June issue this story about seed libraries and interviews with people on this panel. It's a wonderful story. The writer who wrote it is a really wonderful writer, really engaged in food. And we did a few rounds of edits, and I realized after we had been editing the story that it said nowhere in the story what a seed library was. And I think it's really easy to sort of get mired in the details and not like zoom back and be like, okay, someone is coming to the story who's never heard of a seed library. Like, we need to say in the first paragraph what that means. And so I think sort of thinking about you have different levels of audiences, and so you're going to have the people who are like really rooted in this and already really engaged, and you want to have something that's in this proverbial story that will engage them, that's new information, that's a cool anecdote, something that's sort of deeper, but you also have to have that surface level stuff of like, literally, like, you have to walk into a library, you need a library card, like the very surface level stuff of someone who's coming to this for the very first time. And I think, so I try to always have those two groups in mind of like, someone who's never heard of this, has never gardened, has never planted a seed, like what's in it for them? Well, they're free seeds. Maybe they don't actually care about the mission of a seed library. Like, they just want some free seeds. They maybe you won't get those seeds back from them because they're going to be a terrible gardener, but you want to engage with those people who just have no clue. And so I think sort of that like 101 info is actually really important, showing that your library maybe has resources of like, okay, I've got seeds, now what do I do with them? Like, I think a lot of people are still at that level. I'm certainly a very beginning gardener, and I always appreciate, the very basic reminder of what you're supposed to do. And I also think, as you brought up, language is a huge part of that. We've started publishing stories in Spanish and have gotten a really great response to that. Not only, I think a lot of our readers are bilingual, but the sort of reference of inclusion, I think, is really important for bringing in new people. And so it's not only like Spanish, English, it's also the sort of language of inclusion of like, the mission maybe won't resonate with some people, but there are different facets of the mission that you can approach people with. Free seeds, keeping seed diversity. Those are two very different things that are going to resonate with different audiences. And so I think keeping all of those different facets at the forefront and thinking about what messages go where. So, you know, your Facebook audience is going to be different than your newsletter audience or your website audience, or the people who come in and don't have access to any of those technologies and really just want the brochure. And so thinking about how are different audiences going to engage.
Chrissy, brilliant idea.
Oh gosh, brilliant idea. Again, I don't know that I've got a brilliant idea. I think actually it's sitting in this room in some ways. You know, I always believe that there's a wisdom that comes together in the room. And I just have been thinking about relationship, you know, because I think that's really what we're trying to build together. I mean, it's networking and it's building that relationship. So I think, you know, it's how we allow the participatory action to happen. And I think we sometimes have to step out of always thinking about bringing people to us. So how can we also think about other ways of getting the word out there? That not everyone can always come to the library. I feel like, Jen, that the library is actually an amazing place, and it brings an incredible diversity of people because of the absolute historical mission of what a library is about. But how also do we step out of that to go, you know, farmers, growers of seeds are busy people. So if you're wanting to bring seeds into your library, think about that. You know, how does the word get out to the farmers that are busy, that have got their hands in the soil? So that's, to me, really key. And I think what often happens with us, I think that relationship building and the buy-in from other people, the participatory practice, actually is really time consuming. Sometimes we feel, oh, I can just do this myself. I mean, I can see you sitting there from, you know, Zuma, developing this seed library, and there you are as one person. So it takes time in the beginning to build that, but if you actually allow yourself that time to build those relationships, down the road, as this idea grows and sprouts and comes to fruition, you're going to have more help. So in the beginning, it takes a lot of your time. So just, I want to put that out, but it's worth it in the end. So I think that's the key. It's the key is buy-in from, and especially if you want diverse groups. What is going to be the key for that person to want to come and be part of this? So to think of that.
One thing that I would offer up as an idea in terms of how do you get the word out is, I'm guessing, because this has been my experience, when I've been helping other organizations figure out what they want to do, is to pull together a focus group. All of us have people who have brilliant ideas all the time and know how to implement them. Those are the people you want to talk to. Pull together a focus group. They could have backgrounds in whatever, if they do have backgrounds or experience with marketing, PR, publicity, writing, starting up organizations, being on the boards of organizations, running organizations, and then leaving those organizations to run other organizations. Bring those people together in a focus group and ask them what you're asking us. How do we get the word out? Because those people are really good at that. And we always wonder why. It's like, how did she do that? How did she get 1,000 people here? Well, you want to tap into that. It just doesn't happen by magic. Offer an hour-long focus group, have a question, brainstorm for an hour, come out with maybe the top 5 ideas, and then go about making plans to implement those. But don't sit there and think that, oh my gosh, by the end of this, we're going to have it all figured out, because you won't. You're going to have more questions than answers. But talk to those people who are already doing the things that you want to do. There was another question. I was jotting down your questions in terms of getting, reaching out to opposing communities, perhaps. And one thing that may seem counterintuitive is to participate or attend events and meetings and gatherings of those other organizations. It's great when you're talking to people who totally agree with what you're doing. The hard part is stepping across that line and talking with people who don't quite agree with what you're doing, or maybe aren't quite on board. I call those friends to be. So rather than expecting and wanting and trying to figure out how can we get them to come to us, which is what you totally tapped into, go over across the line, sit in on those meetings. You don't have to necessarily say anything. You can just listen, because listening is a really big part of communication, right? So you can listen, see what they're talking about. But I'm a firm believer that we're all more alike than we are different. There's going to be something there that I think you can really zone in on. And I think that gets to your particular question about how to, how to keep it going. How do we get that core group going? How do we get that network going? It's not all about us in this room who totally believe in one thing happening and the importance of it. It's a lot of people outside of this room who have no idea what's going on that you want to reach out to. So whether they're elected officials in your particular community, whether they're very high energy people who are just dead set against whatever it is that you are dead set for, and we know who those people are, right? Okay, so it's about getting on their radar and sharing the information that you have with them. Sitting down for coffee, $1.39. Okay, doesn't cost a lot.
Not in Santa Fe.
Okay. Okay, good coffee. All right, I'll say that. But I think a really, 200 level idea or 200 level sense of, well, what do we do now? We've done A, B, and C. Now what? Go talk to people who you normally wouldn't even do that, enter that conversation with. And it may be scary at first, so write down what you want to talk about. Write down the questions. Send them an email. Would you be open to just talking for 30 minutes? I just want to get, learn more about what you're doing. That's it. Yeah. Questions?
Extending the idea of the bookmobile, actually we have a seedmobile because our library is 3 metal library old things. And so all the seeds are on the cart. So I go and I bring my car and I take everything. And the first place we took it to was the Home and Garden Expo, which is where we met Seed Broadcast. And the audience there was partly the choir that we preached to, but partly people who just came in to see what kind of new flooring they might want to put in their house. And that was really a different population. When we went to Earth Day, it was all the choir.
Nice.
But we have a blues festival coming up, so I'm thinking it might be worth our while to buy a booth to reach a complete, you all may come to the Silver City Blues Festival, I don't know, but it's so diverse. And I think actually I'm beginning to think that this cart idea that we have is really, because we're not in the library. We're in a nonprofit that has the same values that we do, and they're one of our sponsors. But it's out of the way. It's not. And I think eventually we're going to have to move to the library. But in the meantime, the Seedmobile will do a good job.
Yeah, there's a group in they call Barrio Seed Bank that are just starting up in Chicano Park in San Diego, and they're going to get a little paleta cart, one of these little ice cream carts.
That's right.
Because again, it's very significant to the area. It wouldn't work everywhere, but right there, that's what they're doing, and they're turning it into a seed cart, and they're going around, and it's fabulous. So, there's, to me, a creative idea that's actually come from that neighborhood. It's, it's an identity there. So what is it in our own neighborhoods that maybe, in Santa Fe it'd probably be the bicycle with a cart on the back, bicycling around.
And we actually have a book bike here in Tucson that does that and goes around the community, especially in the downtown area, giving away free books and now free eyeglasses because there's a partnership with the Lions Club. Wow. So rather than expecting folks to come to us, we go out to them and we give them books, and when they see that they're free, we don't have to give these back. I think there's some kind of significance with the Seed Library too, right? So you do the same thing, just an idea. I'm
That's a
gonna,
question.
oh, I have a question.
I was talking to people from Toronto about their mobile unit, and they have actual a push cart that
Right.
is a sculptural shape of a seed.
So people are gonna see that, yeah, they're gonna notice it and wanna talk about it, right?
Yeah, there's a group in Mexico that have been going for years, Alberto Ruiz, who has a corn bus. A bus, actually, a corn bus. And they've been going since the late 70s, early 80s.
So visuals.
Visual.
Yeah, they've attracted attention
Yeah.
that way. I'm going to pitch another question to the panel here that sort of addresses some of what I was hearing out here. But what have been some of the positive outcomes of the publicity or outreach that you've done and seen?
Creating a partnership with a community, a city 18 miles from Patagonia that never existed before in any community activity, and that's with Nogales, which is an urban area, well, urban to Patagonia with 100,000 people, and our community and the sharing of seeds, ideas, and new friendships. And what has evolved out of that is not only to have our educational programs in Patagonia at our library, but to bring educational programs to the center, the Mariposa Center in Nogales. So once again, it's stepping out of your comfort zone.
That's great. Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I think that, I mean, what we do, I can talk about kind of from the framework of what Seed Broadcast does is, you know, that we are just constantly inspired by the people that we meet, right? And the generosity that people have in terms of sharing their stories and their resources and what they do in very caring ways. And I think that there's something that happens too, that, I mean, when we were at the Barrio Seed Bank after the event that we did with them, they were like, wow, like, why did you come? Like, we're like nobody, you know, we're so insignificant, you know, like we just started, like, we didn't think this was for real. And we're like, wow, what you're doing is so valuable and so important. And so really valuing each other in terms of what we do and valuing, right, the little people, like the little people in the world are like, I mean, we might feel like little ants scurrying around all the time with way too many things to juggle, but like what we're doing is incredible. And I think that, you know, what we have to contribute to one another, our resources, our knowledge, but is inspiration, right? It's feedback and inspiration to say, hey, this is important, and we can keep doing it, you know, ourselves and as a community and as sort of this larger, right? That there's the micro and the macro happening, that we're working in community, we're working in sort of these regional networks, but then we're also working in this like global community that is extremely empowering. So, yeah.
From your perspective, Megan, how do you see what other organizations and other businesses are doing in terms of publicity, and how are they getting your attention, and you know, when it comes to positive outcomes, how are you getting your stories?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I drive around town. No, I don't know. I mean, I think it's, we have a really amazing network of freelance writers who sort of are out in the community talking to people and get fired up about things.
So your writers produce the stories. You're not taking like stories that I would write about the Seed Library and just publishing them. You're sending out freelance writers.
No, we assign, all of our stories are assigned. So we either have a story idea that we generate in-house on the magazine staff and we assign it to a freelance writer, or a freelance writer comes and says, hey, I want to write about this particular thing. And a lot of it is, you know, in this kind of community, it's word of mouth. It's like, hey, I heard this was going on and this is so cool.
Right.
And I think a lot of it is like, it's all about people, right? It's like people doing cool things that they're passionate about, and you know, I think that's how I find cool stories is like some person is fired up about what they're doing, and they're, you know, it connects to other things, and it has some sort of like larger significance.
Yeah, good. That's really cool. So you're on the other side of what I do in terms of I pitch stories for a very long time, and what I found is that it's easier than I thought. It's pretty scary. The idea of, you're going to call up this person and they're going to say, yeah, we'll publish that. Just send us over some pictures and you write up the story. And it turns out it's true. So that is something that I would encourage all of you to try, not with Megan, but with other publications.
No, but I also would say that like be confident in that your story is a cool story.
Right.
Like
know that it's cool.
No, I mean like if you're doing good work, right. So therefore it's a cool story. Like, and so I think whoever writes it, whoever ends up producing this content, like having that sort of like confidence that this is cool stuff worth telling about, I think is really important. Like someone like me, I don't always know that kind of stuff because I'm sending emails to all of our writers. That's all I do, you know. And so I think having that like broadcasting what you're doing is really important.
Nice. One thing that I pitched last year with our local newspaper, the Arizona Daily Star. It's the one that services Southern Arizona and has a number of readers, has an online presence as well. And I worked with one of the editors on producing a regular monthly series of articles written by library staff from their perspective. The idea being that rather than sending out a reporter to tell the story of various library staff doing various cool things, let's hear it in their voice. So we kicked that off during the Tucson Festival of Books that's hosted here in Tucson, and that was during the month of March, and I contacted 3 of our librarians who had actually worked on the festival, and we successfully put together 3 stories during that time frame right up until the festival. And after that, I was talking with the features editor, and she said, well, what do you think about doing this on a monthly basis? Do you think you could, you know, find people who'd be interested in that? And I said yes. And did I actually know that I could? Not necessarily. And my advice to you is say yes, then figure it out later. Always. And so I did a couple of things. I started with my inner core of library friends, and I said, there's this great opportunity, and you're so cool, and you have to write a story, and this is what you'll do, and this is how it works, and I'll do the editing, and we'll take a picture, and we'll send it in. And it worked. And so we've been sending in and having our articles published every month since last March. Wow. And so we've had a number of our they don't have to be librarians either, I will mention that. They're not all librarians. So we've had Karen Green, who headed up the book bike venture in Tucson, do a story last month. One is coming out in May about our summer reading program and how one of our librarians who basically grew up on the weekends at her swap meet with her parents and how that really connected with her. So we did that. We had one of our librarians who's part of our collection development office. So she picks the books for people, and people wrote in after that. And I said, I had no idea how you guys got the books for us. This is so cool. And we had co-chairs of our LGBT services committee write a story about the author that we were bringing in. And so think about stories that you actually can write. It's about getting the word out. You decide what the word is. And we're not so heavily dependent on the media as we used to be because they were the only ones who could tell stories. If you have a flip camera and you have a MacBook, it's amazing what you could do. I somehow figured out a way to produce a 10-minute video on a dance and drum group that I belong to because I'm a dancer who sort of dresses like a marketing professional during the daytime. So we wanted to put out a video promoting the organization, and I said, oh, this will be so cool if we could get someone else to do it. And I was just like, okay, all right, let me try this. Had no idea what I was doing, but, you know, thank heavens for Google, figured it out. But it came out, you know, it's so community-based, it's so grassrootsy, because it wasn't polished. And so people appreciated that, and they love the music, and they love seeing people who look like you guys doing something like drumming. You know, regular people can drum. You don't have to be a professional. You don't have to be, you know, a Ringo Starr, and regular people dancing. So I say if you have access to a laptop, if you have access to some kind of video camera, if you have access to a smartphone, and someone who has a pretty steady hand, you can tell as many stories and spread the word in as many ways as possible.
You know, what you're saying about spinning out a whole year of stories, I think one of the troubles of how the media thing used to work is they had limited print space and there weren't website backups, and they would say, your community paper would say, well, we've already done one seed library story, or we've already done one library story. And I think when we have the retreat things for edible, the common thing is, well, how can we tell a different kind of story about, you know, we don't have to do an overview of seed banks each time. It could be about a single person who's decided to grow seeds for the seed bank at one particular branch or something like that. Or it could be, like you said, the Nogales Patagonia sort of healing of rural and urban and collaboration there. So the thing that I would do is think about, no, we've done that already, repellent. Some kind of repellent that you have to carry with you to say whenever it's an editor, newsletter editor, or website, or a webmaster, whatever, to say, no, now I'm talking about a completely different way of doing it, like we've talked about. You know, can Linda, as a farmer who's worked with a lot of chefs, talk about describing the culinary qualities of varieties rather than thinking, oh, every time Native Seed Search has a new farmer's manager, we should do a profile of the farmer's manager. That'd be great in an ideal world. They come in at some stuff that Native Seed Search does, or Linda's particular skills and talents over 30 years, in a completely unique way. Doesn't look like redundancy at all, you know. And so I really think that the key thing is know what to do when someone says, well, haven't we done that before? And you just say, not the way I'm talking about it this time.
Yeah, I think that same thing is true in terms of, I was thinking about programming, you know, that a lot of seed libraries and public libraries, right, do public programming, workshops, readings, I mean, a whole, really a large gamut of different public programs. And I was thinking about how, you know, a lot of times we think seed libraries, seeds, agriculture, and food is this obscure topic. And it's not. It touches everything, right? And so if there are ways that you could actually use public programming, right, to do plugins for the seed library, that then all of a sudden you could attract a lot of other types of attention to what's going on, right? And Justine.
Yeah, and one of our most successful programs, actually, for years the libraries participated in the All Souls procession. It's not like the Dia de los Muertos, but it sort of celebrates those that tradition of celebrating those that we've lost. And it's become this really wonderful, phenomenal thing. The libraries participated in that floats and all human propelled, you know, there are no motor vehicles procession. It's quite large, beautiful. We've been doing that for many years, and then we started doing, you know, there's this sort of making these seed sugar skulls in the library system, and so we kind of had this notion of taking this sort of riff on the seed ball or seed bomb and kind of marrying it with Taladeras, because what is more beautiful than sort of celebrating the life of somebody, something that is equally life-giving and nurturing, and it was just this incredible thing, and it was, you know, it really spoke to people, and it was programming that was intercultural, you know, intergenerational, and it was lovely. So yeah, we kind of try to find ways to explore those connections on different levels, not just about food, but again, life.
Thank you, Justine.
Another thing like that, that's a way that you can, you know,
have regular, unique content that would be interesting to people would be highlighting what's in flower right now or what's in harvest right now. You know, regardless of where you're at, there's going to be a variety of different things that are like, hey, you might have noticed there's all these flowers that are outside blooming right now. Those are these, and we have them on stock. You know, and so being able to go with the seasonal variations and the different inflorescences and harvests that are going on, and then writing articles about those that then tie back to, and by the way, you can find them at your local seed library.
That's great. One thing that we did at the library with our website, and this was the genius of one of my coworkers, was that if you look at our website right now, it's all about seeds, all about growing, regardless of the particular area. We have children and families, we have beyond books, we have books and authors, we have featured. Everything up until Wednesday is all about seeds and growing and gardening. And that just spurred, that came out of her head this weekend, and so she worked to put all that information up there. But it gave us the idea right before I came down here. We were like, let's do Mother's Day, okay? So that's what we'll be doing on Thursday, is trying to figure out different ways to put things around a theme that is of interest to the more general community as well. You have a question?
Just in terms of program, I just wanted to give everybody a heads up that we're making a film about London as she learned to Hannah's thing about the big picture. When it's finished, we're going to give it to people, to organizations, engaged organizations across the food web, you know, any environmental organization, anybody. I mean, it's the choir, but it's not the choir, right? So, I mean, that would be a perfect thing. It's going to be entertaining. We haven't finished editing it yet, but it's going to be entertaining, inspiring. It's not specifically about seeds. It's about the global food system. It's about how people can make a difference. So, you know, I mean, if you could put a program around an entertaining film and even partner with different organizations like, you know, animal communities and the library. I'm just thinking it out, but you could collaborate with different organizations to put on an event, and then afterwards, you know, people are inspired about the whole food web, right, through this film. We haven't edited yet.
Great.
The idea. And then that would be a way to have an opportunity to talk about libraries, or to talk about global food systems, or talk about politics, and whatever it is. So that they're coming in for not specific, you know, well, I'm not a seed person, I'm not interested in speed, that's not for me. But anybody can relate to entertainment.
Great. So it's a new way to start a conversation.
So it's a way to start.
Right, thank you. Good luck with your project too. So we have just a few minutes, and I'm just going to ask each of the panel members for that one piece of advice you would give to our people here regarding whether they're just starting their work or continuing on. 200, 300 level, maybe we're at the 400 level maybe now. What one piece of advice you would give them regarding publicity or spreading the word, getting the word and the idea and the concept out to people who already aren't behind them?
I think the key thing is, once again, communication and the outreach to organizations and groups of people that you may not have thought of, that do have that varying role, be it in the community, whatever. But I'm just going to add the one piece that I'm taking back from this whole conversation here, and that is to shorten our mission statement. It's all about the communication and reaching out in places that you might not normally reach out to.
How about you, Chrissy?
It's just all about relationship. So keep really building the relationships, even although you maybe think things are up and running. Keep what you're doing living and breathing and alive and passionate, because that, and keep the relationship building, and remember to listen. Not talk all the time, not keep pushing out your stuff. Bring things back into. It's reciprocity, and if people know you're listening and taking their advice, then it begins to
I think I already said it, which is sort of just how have confidence that these are really cool stories that I think people are interested to hear and people want to engage with. So, I mean, I love the idea of having people tell their own stories, like people who have come to the seed bank, the seed libraries to, you know, to check out seeds, and maybe it's this whole array of people, and that I could see that being like a Facebook regular post or a series of articles. So, I don't know. I think it's this kind of stuff is someone in my position is always really refreshing. It's not like a new restaurant. Not that we don't love our restaurants, but it's, you know, it's people engaging and investing in their community, and that's really important. And I think people will respond to that. So I don't know. I have no advice. I'm just kind of awed by all of your work.
Well, I think that so much as we've talked about already and has already been kind of spoken for, but I just totally agree that, you know, relationships and partnerships and communication and real, like, FaceTime with people, like, we shouldn't expect that electronic media does all of that for us, is really essential. And I also think, you know, that idea of sort of diversifying, right, the labor pool and sort of the thinking behind these projects, getting people that you can work with, you know, from diverse sectors of the community is really important, and enabling, right, enabling others to participate who wouldn't otherwise feel like it's important to them or that they have a stake in it, is to really unpack, like, how it adds value to so many people's lives, to be a part of it and to participate in it and to actually make it what it can be. So, yeah.
I think my piece of advice to you all would be to know what your call of action would be. It sort of ties back into the mission statement conversation we had earlier, but one thing that I used to tell my clients and the organizations that I worked with when it came to that elevator pitch, which some of us have heard about or maybe gone to workshops and talked about, is the elevator speech being, what's that one, you know, your 10-second spiel that you would do going up in an elevator. So what I did, and I worked with my clients, I said, well, what if Oprah stepped in that elevator with you and you had 10 to 15 seconds? What would you tell Oprah? And we know Oprah fixes everything, right? She gives away things and you look under the chair and your life is solved. So I would ask them, if Oprah was in the elevator with you, what would you say to her? As long as you know that, spreading the word is one thing, but when you have somebody who can actually do something to help you move your mission forward, you need to know what you would say to that person. After that, it's all icing. Okay? Thank you very much.